What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Teddy Atlas, Eddie Hearn. Get this. Teddy Atlas details Eddie Hearn's horrible matchmaking. You got to be smarter. Teddy Atlas has thrown some criticism the way of Eddie Hearn for his matchmaking, but not in the way you typically expect. Promoters often are accused of giving their fighters too many soft touches with a lack of competitiveness on the cards, one of the more common grievances amongst boxing fans. However, speaking about the Katie Taylor versus Chantel Cameroon card on his podcast, The Fight, former trainer Atlas blasted Hearn for getting some of his popular Irish fighters beat that night. He said, "These people who are running these shows over there in Ireland, these great crowds." Okay. Oh, another pop-up. Great. These great crowds aren't going to keep up if you keep getting these Irish guys licked. You've got to do better matchmaking. There was a show last week. Katie Taylor and Gary Cully had a great crowd to be there for them, and they both got knocked off. The matchmaking was horrible. They moved Taylor up in weight, and Cameron, who's a monster, they could have looked somewhere else. She's the one bringing in the fans. They didn't have to fight her. And then the kid Cully, they put him in with this 46-fight monster Felix, and he gets knocked out in 3 rounds. Again, they didn't need to. You're sabotaging what you're building by putting these guys in with fighters that just don't make sense. If you're going to try to, if you're trying to mature and build a following in that area, you've got to be smarter than that as a matchmaker. Those are the words of Teddy Atlas. Let me counterpunch. This is rare from Teddy, but then Teddy knows the business more than anybody else. But I think Teddy needs to understand that a guy like Eddie Hearn is a very aggressive, younger promoter. And I think this goes with the territory of being that type of guy. You know, June 1st, 2019, Anthony Joshua took on Andy Ruiz. Nobody knew Andy Ruiz was going to be like that. I mean, let's face it, no one knew that, okay? No one knew that type of, opposition was going to come at Anthony Joshua the way it did. And it made you think like, wow, no one's really never safe, because if anything, Eddie Hearn was actually trying to give the fans a good fight without giving you, especially due to the disappointing outcome of how Jarrell Miller just totally disappointed everybody, including himself. Okay, most importantly. But the show must go on. The show must go on, and I think at the very end of the day, no one really knows how these fighters are going to come in. I think the matchmaking was a lot better than other fighters would. See, Teddy is reminding me of guys that speak like Oscar De La Hoya or Bob Arum. Older, more mature, I guess, promoters. And these promoters, what they do, they, in fact, go on a situation where they gauge, okay, this fighter versus this fighter. Does Teddy have a point, though? Well, kind of, but then kind of not. Because you don't want people to always fight someone that doesn't fight back. You don't want a showcase fight all the damn time. And I think because of the other promotional companies on the way they manage and promote their fighters, I think that's the reason for the push of intensity of competition with these fighters coming from Eddie Hearn, because Eddie Hearn wants to do something that sticks out. Okay, he wants to get these fighters in a situation where they have to change, they have to make adjustments, they have to show their greatness, you know, and that shows how good they are. They're actually appropriately challenged. Okay, and I think that's what Teddy's failing to understand. You know, him of all people that's coming from the old school should know, like, oh, these fights don't make sense. That's bullshit, new age, corruptive boxing talk. Politic BS, okay? Because at the end of the day, people should see a fight or a fighter show his greatness or her greatness by getting in there with a person that really wants to win is just as much as they do. You know, because again, we can go to let's look at Felix Verdejo. Felix Verdejo was this prodigy from Puerto Rico. He's incarcerated now. He may get the death penalty, but nonetheless, you know, he goes in there. They put him up against an absolute monster at ESPN, Antonio Lozado Jr. You know, and this dude's record was it's 40 wins, 34 by knockout, 5 losses and 1 draw. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, hey, what do you do? You know what I mean? But at some point, you have to take a chance, and Kaylee Taylor's no rookie. Katie Taylor is pushing towards that Hall of Fame bracket, so whoever she fights should be a valid, credible fighter. So I don't see why Teddy's the way he is right now. It just doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? If anything, he's like, oh, well, these Irish fans. Now, speaking of Ireland, that is fairly a new, I can't say a new place where you've broadcast fights, but on a commercial level, you do want to bring fights over there like that. You know, I think smaller fights should come, you know what I mean? And then those smaller fights should appetize those bigger fights. You know, but things like this happens in the sport of boxing. It's the reason why I love this sport that I hate so much, because anything can happen, okay? And a lot of times the judges and the politics and and all that can be knocked to the side by these right here. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think of Teddy Atlas criticizing Eddie Hearn for putting his opponents in there with too stiff of competition. Of course, please subscribe, and you guys been Counterpunch. Peace!